we have our final guest. She has a memoir that she's written, and her name is Sharon Arrindell, Reverend Dr. Sharon Arrindell. And she's actually written a couple of, it's a two-part memoir, a two-book set. Sharon has been on the show before. It was last year sometime, and we're pleased to have her back on the show to talk. You're going to talk about the Armored and Victorious one. Oh, unmute your mic.
Well, that's the most recent. So
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So did you have them both there with you?
Yeah, I have a copy.
Okay.
Done. Yeah.
Okay. Armored and Victorious.
Yeah, it's the
And
sequel. It's the sequel to
the first book, which is
Weapons for Victory. Weapons for Victory.
Weapons
Yeah.
for Victory. And these are both memoirs covering different aspects of your life. So tell us
Yes.
about the first book, even though you've been on before and talked about it, but some people may not have been on.
Yeah.
And so we want to refresh their memories or just expose people to the first book takes people from what part of your life to what part of your life.
Well, I'm sorry. Let me just turn my phone on. Hold on. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
The first book takes you from me as a teenager, a renegade teenager is what I want to call it, because I grew up in a Christian home, but you want to explore. So I was
You went through your rebellious stage.
Yes, ma'am. Just exploring and exploring until I couldn't explore anymore. And that took me to a car accident that threw me out of a vehicle. You're exploring and you're reckless when you're in a Toyota Camry and it's 9 of you in the car. And so that just sounds ridiculous to even say out of my mouth, but that's the reckless kind of lives that we were living these days. That doesn't probably sound reckless to the teenagers of today, but it was reckless for us. And on that night, and to be honest, I was probably 19 or 20 years old. So that's not even a teenager. It's actually a young adult. And on that night, I didn't die. And that's all that mattered, is that I didn't die. And I vowed that I would serve God with the rest of my life. So the story goes on and on about me getting married and all the things that came behind that, sickness, hurricane that almost took me and my children, but we didn't die. And so it became Memoirs of a Perfect Storm. It was perfect because God was with us all the way as I dragged my children through muddy water to get to safety. It was just, that's the gist of this first book, is how he just took me from thing to thing, place to place, over and over, but we never physically died, even though it felt like we were. It didn't happen. And so that's where the victory part comes in, right? And so I wrote all of that only meaning to write all of that. And that was the end of the book.
Okay.
That was it, until people started asking for the sequel. And I kept saying, what sequel? I don't have a sequel. There's, but people are still watching the journey, right? They're watching it go on and going, yeah, you have a sequel. We want to know what's happening behind the scenes. And so I kept on writing in a journal, but never intending it to be a book, until COVID happened. And I ended up with COVID, and almost dying from COVID. And being in that hospital scene is no joke. I hear people talk about having COVID, and I go, did you have the real COVID? No, because I recall that hospital scene where you couldn't have any visitors, no loved ones, no nothing, and hearing screaming throughout the night of people wanting to go home. I just want to go home. I kept hearing, I just want to go home. And the nurses would say, I would say, is everything all right with the people? And they're like, well, it's the same thing you're going through, only you're doing it silently in here. Remembering all the injections every night that they came and gave each and every one of us to prevent blood clot and different things, and all the things, and listening to the conversations that sounded like, they're checking you out. But at the end of that, I got out of the hospital and I looked back up to the fourth floor and I said, Lord, I'm a designated survivor. What would you have me to do? And the book, right? The book, because I was sick for 3 months and
Wow.
I couldn't remember anything. I had brain fog, couldn't remember. I could hardly speak. My husband kept saying, are you gonna laugh again? Are you gonna, I couldn't find my legs. I would go to the door and look at the mailbox and go, if I could just walk to the mailbox, I know I'm gonna be all right. And finally being able to walk to the mailbox and literally walk back to the house was a big deal, became a big deal. And after all of that, I started the book and just went from where I left off to where I am. And I'm telling you, I tell everybody I'm living my best life. I am 64 years old and I'm living my best life with the support of a good husband. And because in the first book, I had to talk about the divorce from my children's father, and it was just a buildup, but throughout the whole thing, you get chapters like chapters that say, I want to read them because I don't know them off the top of my head. Chapters that talk about embracing change, homecoming, the wonder years, surviving the breaking point, when life throws you lemons and you make sweet lemonade, the aftershock of stillness, living shattered, uphill on the roller coaster. The saga continues, winning in the battle, in the trenches with victory ahead, freedom at a cost, preparation for the belly of the whale or the belly of the fish, on the edge of crossing over, positioned to cross over, entering the crossover season, living while the world stood still, designated survivor, and from surviving to thriving. And that's what this book is about. And it's not for me anymore. I'm thriving. It's for that woman or that man or whoever out there. Understand that if you're going to rise from the ashes, that means there was a fire and you get to rise from it.
Well, fire cleanses, fires. So it's not all, fire doesn't always mean death.
That's right.
You come out better. And it sounds like you came out better.
I came out better. Came out better.
Yeah, one of the things that you were describing about COVID and being in the hospital with COVID, that was, of course, the whole COVID pandemic was a crucible in the history of the world
Mhm.
and America as well. Um, how did you manage not being able to have contact with your loved ones? How did
That was
how were you able to do
that was
that?
the hardest. That was the hardest part because I sat in my house with COVID for a couple of days because at the time when I got it, it was 2021. And it
Okay.
seemed like, it was getting,
Waning.
and right. So I thought I could do this from home. And until one night I got up off the bed and I looked at the bathroom, which wasn't that far away, but my legs, I kept saying, I don't know if my legs are gonna take me there. Everybody was asleep, my husband was asleep, and I tried to make it to the bathroom and I got there and I held on to the sink like it was for dear life. And he said all he heard was a big thump on the floor because I just fell out. I could hear him talking, but I couldn't say anything. I was just, I was like, holy cow, this is it. I mean, because I couldn't say anything. I'm trying to talk and nothing is coming out. And that's when realized, okay, you gotta go to the hospital. You gotta go to the emergency room, and driving there and can't even sit up in the car, somebody had to dress me, get me in the car, get me there. And those crucial words, your family has to go and you have to stay. um that was the most crucial part, and just being there. Thank God people were calling me from the church, from all over the world, from places that I've ministered. People were calling me. I had one person from a congregation send up because I couldn't answer everybody, couldn't answer. And I saw the message said, does anybody know where my friend Dr. Sharon is? Because I'm trying to reach out. And that literally saved my life. Just those words of people sending, it was so many messages. I was overwhelmed, but glad at the same time, because that was my only connection to be on the walls of that hospital, was the messages and my daughter FaceTiming every day from San Diego, that I look forward to that. And that, I think that made me, I don't know how anybody made it, or if they made it with no family or friends reaching out to talk to them.
I think that was the worst part of the COVID epidemic is people having to be in the hospital alone.
Mhm, mhm,
Loved ones,
mhm.
and sometimes people passing away alone.
Yeah,
That was the scariest part of
yeah,
everything.
yeah. I'm telling you, people were screaming. I heard screaming. And then you keep hearing code red over and over. And you're going, oh, it's not me. It's not that you want to be selfish, but it's
Right.
not me. They're not calling code red for me, but they're calling code red for somebody else. And, just, uh, I found myself praying for the people on the floor, because you knew when people got worse, they put a red thing on the door. Mine stayed, I think it was yellow for the whole entire time. And because once they change the color, I think that's how they decide who is worse than who. And then they let people out because they need a bed. I was let out because they need a bed, but when I went home, I was still sick. I was still sick, so I had to have, thank God for insurance that allowed me to have doctors come to the house every week to take care of me. So it was pretty intense, to say the least. And so I stood still just like the world. I had to stay still and believe that I was going to be okay, that I was going to get my memory back, I was going to get my legs back, I was going to get everything back. And if I do, I'm going to write the book. I promise I'm going to write the book. And
I was
so
just going
I
to
wrote the
say,
book.
this is proof positive. Just telling this story right now that your story is not for you, it's for,
Mhm.
and it just sounds like you're here for a purpose, and you're fulfilling that purpose by telling this story.
Yes, 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 ma'am. That's exactly it. It's hard to sell books. You know, I've written a lot of them, and it's hard to literally sell books, but I was invited to San Diego to do something with this book, and that's where my family is, my grandchildren. And the icing on the cake was when people were coming to get their book signed, and my oldest grandson is 10, and he came with his book and asked me to sign it. And his mother saying, he's reading this thing. He's reading my story. And that's the icing on the cake for me.
That's amazing. So why
Yeah.
did you call it Armored and Victorious?
Instead of armed, right? Armed.
Yes.
Um, well, armed means you have, a weapon in your hand or whatever. Armored means you have on the full armor of God, right? So
Okay,
you're
so it's
not
taken
just
from that scripture.
right. You're
Mhm.
not just holding a weapon in your
Weapon.
hand. You're
Mhm.
fully equipped. You got on your helmet, you got your sword, you got your belt, you got, all the different parts. And I literally explain all the parts in the book and how they apply to us today. If we could keep them on, because so many things come to attack. The helmet is supposed to protect your mind, and that's where all the attacks that start in your mind, and you want to just give it up, but you keep putting it back on every day, every piece. So armored, when you're armored with all of the pieces in place, you become victorious, and then you get to cross over into that next season, that bigger season that God has for you. If you could just get there, if you could just get there. Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of people, when they're going through something, one of the hardest things is to not give up
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and to keep going. And a lot of times your blessing is right around the corner if you just don't give up.
That's
Just
right.
have to keep going.
That's right.
And a lot of people who are in the same situation might give up at step number 5 when they really needed to go to step number 8, and they gave up too soon. So um, that's I think that's part of having the armor. If you have the armor, then as you have more confidence to keep going.
Yeah. But still hard. It's still,
Yeah, it is. It is
it's
hard.
still, yeah,
It
just
is still hard.
yeah, it's difficult because, I think of the person in the Bible that has been attacked the most, to me, was Job, right? Everybody knows about Job. People call the patience of Job, whatever. And at the beginning of the scripture, God says to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job?" And I'm like, and goes on to say he's blameless and all of these things. And you want to say, well, why? Why are you going to let Satan bother him if he's blameless and all of these things? Because I want to prove him. I want to prove him. And I feel like I've been proven, right? I have not arrived. You never, you don't get to really arrive, but I've been proven over the years so that I can help somebody else. to get to the place of being proven, right? Because everybody wants to grow, but nobody wants to be pruned. And when you have a plant, if you don't prune it, it's not going to grow. And the pruning part is the part that hurts the most. But nobody wants that part. They just want to grow and flourish, and it's just great.
And the blossom and blossom.
That's right. That's right.
Everybody wants to grow, but nobody wants to be pruned. That's gonna stick with me. I like that one.
Yeah, that's the thing. So that, I sit here before you, life, it's not that it's a bed of roses. It's just that things are just different to me. Like, and it's not as urgent. It's not as life-threatening. Nothing is life-threatening, right? It's just life and living it and doing all the things that require. I mean, today, I have 2 grown children that I swam out of a hurricane with. They are married to 2 great people, and they have given me 5 grandchildren, right? I am married to, everybody laughs when I say he's my dream guy. I'm married to my dream guy, and he has 5 grandchildren. So combined, we have 10. Who would have thought when I was swimming out of that house that this was going to be who I would be today? I didn't think. I couldn't even think. I was just running and screaming and carrying on. You're not even thinking at that point when you're watching the glass door just cave into the house and the water is rushing in, and you just grab your children and run. You don't even know where you're going. You're just running, hoping you're running in the right direction. And when the storm is over and you go and you sit on the basement, it was in New York, and you sit and everything you own is on the top of the water, and you go, this does not look good. this does not look good, and I can recall my children's father. That was when it really hit home for him, and he said, I am done. I am just done with God. And I said to myself, wow, there's no way he could mean that, but he did, because it was rough out there. I get it. It was rough out there, but I still kept trudging away as a single mom, changed my life. I went from being a fashion designer to going back to school and becoming whatever. That was the plan. Whatever. There was no, what are you going to do when you get out of school? I don't know. I just want to be able to make a salary so I could take care of my children. I don't know what I'm going to be. And today I have my own counseling practice, and I get to counsel people and counsel them back to life. And I couldn't have made that up. I could not have written that story. I couldn't have done it.
Well, it seems like it more or less wrote itself.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
And that's what happens, in life. Some truth is always stranger than fiction. So, and some things that are true are much more impactful and have much more gravity than some of the things that are made up, because they're real. Now, with COVID, we lost our father to COVID. And it was fast. He was 89, and he was in the hospital. We did get, and that's the thing about COVID, you couldn't be with your loved one. So we were able to do a Zoom call with him. They told us he was transitioning, and then so 3 days after that, he passed away. but we were his children were able to do the Zoom call. And he was, even though he wasn't fully conscious, he was responding to our voices. So we knew that he
The thing is, he
was
heard
aware.
you, and he was able to transition with love around him. I think that's a blessing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he was 89, so he lived a full life. He really did. So
Yeah.
well, Sharon,
Yes,
do you
ma'am.
have a are you doing a tour, or tell us where you'll be next and where we can find you online?
Am I doing a tour? That is so, you're not the first person to ask me that question, but you know, I kind of let go of books and trying to sell them for a while. And we're only in February of 2024, and everybody is asking about these books, wanting to interview me or something about these books. So
That's your sign.
that's right. That's right. That I really need to do something, and it's in my space, it's in my headspace as far as doing some things with the books, whether it's a tour, whether it's a book club, whatever it is, something is going to happen with these books because I didn't write them for myself, you know. I wrote them for other
For other
people,
people.
and so I sell them on my website more than anywhere else. And now I'm actually building a site just for my books. It's not quite done yet, but when it's done, it will be drsharonbooks.com, right?
Okay.
And so I'll get to literally sell them directly from there for the, you know, because Amazon gets most of everything when Amazon sells it, but I'm going to monetize these books some way, somehow.
Well, we did
Yeah.
put your website, the website that you currently have, that is in the chat so people can purchase your book. I
Mhm.
want to thank you for being on the show. Unfortunately, we've come to the
At
end.
the end of it.
Yeah.
Yes,
Mhm.
but I want to thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for being on the show and for blessing us with that mini sermon that you preached that you didn't even think that you were given because people needed to hear it. So thank you so much.
Thank you guys for having me. Thank you so much for inviting me. And you guys have a blessed night and a blessed time. Rest of the night. I don't know if somebody else is coming on here, but
No,
No,
this is the end of the show. So we're getting
oh,
ready to do our outro and let everybody know. We'll see you next Tuesday on Black Authors Matter TV. I'm Gwen Richardson signing off.
and I'm Dr. Rhonda
Bye.
Lawson. Have a wonderful evening and a great week.